All right, welcome back to Turbo Garage. So in this episode, we are going to be pulling out the transmission in this 2013 Ford Escape. It is not a fun job, but you know what? It's not going to happen by itself, so let's just jump right into it. All right, working on this thing is nothing short of a big old pain in the butt. What I found is there's so much interference on the top part of the transmission, I actually decided to start removing some coolant lines. And to do so, I had to drain the radiator. So I've drained the rad, and now I'm moving cooling lines out of the way because there's nothing I hate worse than interference. And down here, there's a starter down there, and one of the bolts to get to, I mean, I was able to get it out just barely with a long extension and a swivel, but really, I think removing the interference is going to be a lot easier. So anyway, we're going to carry on with this. Okay, so underneath the car with that pipe removed, there's actually a lot more room. Get my light here. And the starter, you can see the starter. I got another bolt out in the bottom. There's another one. I don't know if you can see it. There's a ground strap hooked up to this bolt right here. It's a really ignorant spot. Actually, the starter just is plain old ignorant. But once I get that bolt out, the starter should come out. Okay, I got the starter out. I actually had to remove it to get the torque converter bolts out. There's actually two nuts you got to take off, a 10 millimeter and a 13 millimeter. And what I did was when the starter was in the engine like this, I pulled it out and tipped it up so you could get to those bolts from the top, looking down there. So I just threw that little hole. My arms are turning into Swiss cheese from all the plastic clips and everything. But the torque converter nut is a 15 millimeter hex, and it is a stove nut, so it's tight the whole way. You can see it's got that sort of triangular crimp on it. So I believe there's 4 of these on there, and the way I'm doing it is I've got a ratchet on the crank, and then I've got see if you can see it on here, I've got a scope down there, and you can see the torque converter lined up. So I just turn the engine over looking at my scope so I can see when it is at the right spot, which is very helpful. It's about the only thing that's going well is just orientating this flywheel to get these torque converter nuts off. Anyway, we will carry on. I removed that, there's a bolt in the bottom of the spindle that you can take the lower control arm pin out. It's not easy, but the real challenge I'm having, I'm telling you, this has got to be the most challenging transmission removal I've ever had, is getting this axle out. It's an extreme. Normally, you can pull the axle out. It's about maybe about a 2 or 3 inch little stub that goes into the transmission. This one looks to be about 8 inches long. So to get this axle out, I guess you're going to have to remove it out of here. Now I've taken this nut off, but the axle doesn't want to go out because it's so freaking tight. I don't know if I'm going to need to use tried to use my impact chisel. Or pneumatic chisel. That didn't touch it. I gave it one good crack with a hammer. I don't want to damage the threads. That didn't seem to do it. So, but I think that's what's going to have to happen is press the axle out of the spindle, and then you can remove the axle right out of the transmission. I'm actually going to go online and look. I'm sure that's the way it has to happen. But anyway, I will persevere. All right, a major hurdle was getting this drive shaft out. What it was is this end, I guess the splines were a little bit rusty, and there was no way I could press it out of the spindle, out of the hub. So I end up buying a tool, one of these hub pullers or spindle pressers, and put it on there. And I also used some MAP gas and a torch, and I heated up right along this edge here, and I also heated up the backside in here to try to get the housing around that heated up. It took me the better part of probably 45 minutes to get that spindle pressed out to the point where I could get that axle out. Now, once you've got this, oh gee, that's hot. Once you've got this thing tightened up, like really tight, I used a breaker bar on it. Then I used a big hammer and just pounded on it. And then what I actually got to do, I used my vernier caliper, digital caliper, and I measured how much the spindle was protruding, and then I took it off, and I managed to get it to go in about a 1/16 of an inch. And then I actually took the impact gun and the spindle nut and tightened it back up to pull the shaft back out again. So that basically I could, by wiggling the shaft back and forth a little bit with some penetrating oil in there, it loosened up to the point where I was able to press it out. But a lot of work, a lot of time, and I didn't damage the threads on the end of it. That was the key. I mean, you don't want to just go and beat that thing with a hammer. You're going to damage the threads. But there you go. I've seen some videos where it's nice and loose. I wasn't so lucky. But anyway, now I got the joy of doing the other side. All right, this is the setup to remove the axle if it's stuck on you. You just basically just hold this bracket on with lug nuts, and then to keep the wheel from spinning when you tighten this with the breaker bar, I just throw a screwdriver in the vents of the rotor and put it up against the caliper. That's the easiest way to do it, really. And I have actually already, off camera, just started to tighten this thing down, and it's actually pressing it out. The driver's side was an absolute nightmare. Heat, penetrating oil. I did spray some penetrating oil on this a couple days ago, so it's been soaking. Maybe that's why. But thank God it is actually coming out nice and easy. So that'll be the next thing, is to pop out the passenger side axle. Okay, I got the driver's side axle out, and it looks like the differential, or I guess it would be the transfer case, I'm not sure what you call it, but basically the part that goes back to the rear differential, I think I can unbolt that and leave it attached to the engine, and the transmission will pop off of that. But to get that off, there's a bolt you can't get to. There's a heat shield. You can just see the drive shaft there, the back of the drive shaft. That heat shield there has got to come off. There's a couple of 8mm looking screws. There's two that I can see. I'm hoping that's all there is, but that's the next that's going to come off. All right, this thing is kicking my butt, and I'm thinking forward into when I go to put this transmission back in, how hard is it going to be line up those torque converter bolts? And how hard is it going to get it to align up to the bell housing and to the rear the transfer case, whatever you want to call that thing. And so I've come to the decision, I'm going to pull this whole damn engine out, because really I think it should be coming out with the cradle. Just drop the thing out the bottom of the car and then separate the transmission. It's going to be way easier. So to heck with it, I'm pulling the whole damn engine out. All right, so what the hell is going on, and why is my bumper off? Well, I got a good reason for that. As you know, I said I was going to pull the whole engine. There are two reasons for that, really. One, when to get the transmission to try to line it up and everything in there, it's going to be a pain. Plus, the whole back side of the motor with the turbocharger and everything is absolutely coated in oil. And if I remove the engine, I can actually do a really thorough cleaning of all that. So that's the reason I'm pulling the thing out. But to do that, you have to disconnect the harness out of the ECU. Come on over here. And the ECU is located up inside here in the behind the wheel liner in the driver's side wheel well. So to take this cover off here and remove that cover, then you can undo the plugs and pull the wire harness inside the engine compartment, and there remove the engine. However, 2 of the 5 screws are seized. And when I say seized, move around here, they've got a little brass insert. It's basically a knurled insert that's molded inside the plastic when it's made. Well, when that spins, when you try to undo the screw, you're kind of screwed. So I had to get this out, and to get this out, you have to get it some screws, and to get it those screws, you've got to remove the whole front bumper. So, and that's where I'm at. Now, to get those screws out, I tried penetrating oil. And what did I ended up doing? Some of you may end up running into this issue, is I took a pick, I heated it up with a torch, and I went down either side and melted a bit of a groove so that I could get needle nose pliers on here and actually grab the outside of the threaded insert. And then I had to drill, you can see, drill 5 holes down the side of the screw into that brass right all the way through, so that the penetrating oil, not only could the penetrating oil get in, but it actually released some of the tension, if you will, on the screw. So it actually screwed out, so I'm actually going to be able to screw this thing back in, but oh my goodness, what a pain. So this is the other one I'm working on right now, pulling that one out. I'm letting it soak for a bit. But once I get that last screw out there, I can take the cover off, I can unplug the ECU and run the wires into the engine compartment and continue on with the engine removal. Okay, just a little update here. We've got the computer removed and the harness is now up on top, laying on top of the motor. I've got the little subframe piece that goes from here to the lower control arm on both sides removed. I have the AC lines removed from the compressor. There was no AC, there's no Freon in it at all, or refrigerant. It was completely flat, so no problem there, except I hope there isn't a leak somewhere. I guess there probably is, but that's removed. I also removed the sway bar end links. I removed the steering knuckles, tie rod ends, I should say, because when you lower the complete subframe, the steering rack is going to go with it. So you have to, as well, now inside the footwell is a bolt there on the steering shaft. You're going to have to unbolt that before you start to lower the subframe. And then once that's unbolted, it's very important, of course, to lock your steering wheel so that it doesn't spin. Otherwise, you will wreck your clock spring. So I'll put a bungee cord around that and put it around the turn signals or something, just so that it's not going to spin on me. So the next thing to do, we're almost there, actually, almost ready to pull this out. It's going to be a challenge, but the nuts on this exhaust here, they are really bad. I don't know. It's not going to be fun getting those off. So that is, once you remove this part of the exhaust, it looks to come off with the engine. And then it's just a matter of I don't know if you can see it here, the drive shaft up inside there, you got to disconnect that. That's going to be a bit of a pain. But once those two things are disconnected, it's just a matter of these cross members here, unbolting those, and 4 bolts for the rest of the cradle, and the whole thing should just basically lower down. I'll use a couple of floor jacks and see if we can do it without destroying anything. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. It's been a little while since I've put one out. I've been doing a few other things and I just haven't had a lot of time to get on this, so I've just been a little bit here, a little bit there. But I'm going to get this video out so you guys can at least see what I'm getting into here. But yeah, Ford, shame on you. This is really an ignorant thing to do. I've worked on a lot of vehicles, and so far, this is the most challenging one. But you know what? I won't let this thing beat me. I'm going to drop this thing down, separate that transmission, and we're going to get that transmission pulled apart, and that'll be the next challenge. So hopefully in the next video we can, see some real progress here. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you're enjoying this little video on this, and yeah, maybe suffering with me. These videos might suck, or maybe you find them interesting. But yeah, so anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Think about subscribing. Thoughts and comments down below. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and have a great day.